Welcome to Behind Closed Hearts. Subscribe and like. Enjoy watching.
My name is Jake Carter, and looking back now, I can trace everything back to one specific night. The kind of night that doesn't seem important at first, but ends up rewriting everything you thought you understood about your life. It happened at a private party in Austin. At the time, I didn't know it yet, but that was the moment the illusion finally cracked. The house sat up in the hills, one of those modern glass places that looks more like a statement than a home. Clean lines, dim lighting, music humming through hidden speakers. You could see the city lights stretched out below like a backdrop, and everyone there acted like they were part of something exclusive. We had been invited by one of my clients. Good networking opportunity, I told myself. That's how I justified going. Lena didn't need convincing. She got ready that night with a kind of focus I hadn't seen in a while. Not nervous, just intentional. Like she knew exactly what impression she wanted to make. I remember watching her from the doorway as she adjusted her dress in the mirror. "You planning on stealing the whole room tonight?" I asked, half joking. She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Maybe," she said. "Depends on the room." At the time, I brushed that off. Looking back, I realized that was probably my first mistake. When we arrived, she changed almost immediately. Not in an obvious way. It was subtle, but I noticed. Her posture shifted. Her energy sharpened. She moved through the space like she belonged there more than I did. Like she'd stepped into something familiar. Meanwhile, I was still doing what I always do. Shaking hands, making small talk, keeping conversations going with people I barely knew. At some point, I told her I was going to grab drinks. "Get me something light," she said, already scanning the room. I nodded and headed toward the bar. Took maybe 30 seconds. That's it. But when I turned back, she wasn't where I left her. I spotted her across the room, talking to a guy. At first, nothing about it stood out. Just another conversation. That's what I told myself. But then I paused. Something about the way she was standing. Slightly angled toward him, head tilted just enough. Her hand brushing her hair back in that absent way she does when she's engaged. I'd seen that before. Just not with me in a long time. I stayed where I was, drink in hand, pretending to look at my phone while watching them. He was confident. You could tell immediately. Not loud, not flashy, just comfortable. The kind of guy who doesn't need to try too hard because he already assumes things will go his way. And Lena responded to that. She laughed. Really laughed. Not polite, not restrained. It was easy. Natural. And that's when something in my chest tightened. Because it felt familiar. Too familiar. I walked over eventually. Did the normal thing. Introduced myself. Shook his hand. He gave me a name, but I barely registered it. My attention was on her. She didn't seem surprised to see me. Didn't act guilty. Didn't even hesitate. If anything, she seemed comfortable. We stood there for a minute or two, making surface-level conversation. Then the music shifted, slower, heavier. The kind of track that pulls people toward the center of the room without anyone announcing it. He looked at her. Just a quick glance. Not even a question. And she nodded, like it was already understood. That's the part one keep replaying. Because there was no hesitation. No awkward pause. No should we moment. Just recognition. They moved toward the dance floor together, and I told myself I was overthinking it. That this is what people do at parties. That it didn't mean anything. I stayed back. Watched. At first, it was harmless enough. A little space between them. Casual movement. Nothing you couldn't explain away. But it didn't stay that way. Not for long. His hands found her waist. Not clumsy. Not tentative. Confident. Like he knew exactly where they belonged. And Lena, she didn't pull away. She didn't laugh it off or shift back to create distance. She leaned in. Their bodies moved together like they'd done it before. Not perfectly choreographed or anything dramatic, but natural. Instinctive. There was a rhythm between them that didn't come from a first meeting. And that's when it hit me. This isn't new. I remember standing there, feeling completely out of place in a room I was supposed to belong in. The noise faded. Conversations blurred. All I could see was them. Her hand resting lightly against his shoulder. The way she tilted her head back when she laughed at something he said. The way he adjusted his grip without even looking, like he was used to her. Used to her. That thought stayed with me. Because you don't move like that with someone you just met. You don't fall into that kind of rhythm by accident. When the song ended, they didn't separate immediately. That was another detail I couldn't ignore. There was a second, maybe two, where they just stayed close, like neither of them was in a hurry to step back into reality. Then she turned and walked toward me, like nothing had happened, like I hadn't just watched the entire thing. "Having fun?" she asked, taking the drink from my hand like it was the most normal interaction in the world. I studied her face, looking for something, anything, guilt, awareness, even a flicker of awkwardness. Nothing. "Yeah," I said slowly. "Who was that?" She glanced back for half a second. "Oh, just someone here. I don't even remember his name. Too quick. Too clean." I nodded, but something in my gut twisted hard, because I knew that wasn't true. The rest of the night passed in a blur. I went through the motions, talking, smiling, nodding when I was supposed to, but my focus kept drifting back to her, to them. Every time I looked over, they weren't far from each other. Not always touching, not always talking, but always aware, like there was a thread connecting them across the room. And the more I noticed it, the harder it became to ignore what it meant. On the drive home, neither of us said much. She scrolled through her phone. I kept my eyes on the road. The silence wasn't comfortable, but it wasn't explosive either. Just tense, heavy, like something had shifted and neither of us wanted to be the first to acknowledge it. But I couldn't let it go. Not completely. So when we got inside, I kept it simple. "Hey," I said, setting my keys down. "Earlier, that guy. On the dance floor." She sighed immediately, not confused, not curious, annoyed, and that reaction told me more than anything else that night. She didn't even let me finish the sentence. "What about him?" she said, already defensive, already shifting the tone before I could even explain what I meant. That's what stuck with me. Not confusion, not curiosity, defense. Like she already knew exactly where I was going with it. "I'm just saying," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "It looked a little close." I chose my words carefully. No accusations, no edge, just an observation. But it didn't matter. Her expression hardened instantly. "Are you serious right now?" she asked, crossing her arms. I blinked. "What? You're doing this again, Jake," she said, shaking her head like she'd seen this coming from a mile away. That caught me off guard. "Doing what?" "Making something out of nothing." She *** T back. "It was a party. People dance. That's it." I stared at her for a second, trying to process how fast this flipped. "I'm not saying people don't dance," I said. "I'm saying that didn't look like just dancing." And that's when her tone changed completely. Sharp, cold. "You're being jealous." The word landed harder than it should have. Not because it hurt, but because it didn't fit. "I'm not being jealous," I said. "I'm telling you what I saw." "No," she snapped, stepping closer. "You're twisting it into something else, like you always do when you don't understand a situation." I let out a quiet breath, trying to stay grounded. "Lena, I understand exactly what I saw." "Clearly you don't," she fired back. "Because if you did, we wouldn't be having this conversation." That's when I realized something wasn't right. Not just with what happened at the party. With her. Because this didn't feel like a reaction. Felt like a script. "I'm not trying to fight," I said, lowering my voice. "I just want to understand." "There's nothing to understand," she cut in. "You're reading into it. End of story." End of story. Just like that. Conversation closed. Problem dismissed. Blame reassigned. I leaned back against the counter, watching her. Really watching her. And for the first time in a long time, something felt off in a way I couldn't ignore. Not just what she was saying. How she was saying it. There was no hesitation. No effort to meet me halfway. No, I get why that might look bad. Just immediate shutdown. Immediate deflection. Immediate blame. You really don't see how that looked? I asked. She let out a frustrated laugh. No, Jake, I don't. Because it was nothing. Nothing. That word again. Too clean. Too convenient. Okay, I said slowly. Then why did it feel like you knew him? That was the first time she hesitated. Barely. Just a flicker. But I caught it. I didn't, she said quickly. I literally just met him. Too fast. Again. I nodded, but I didn't respond right away. Because my mind was already moving somewhere else. Replaying. Reanalyzing. Looking for patterns I might have ignored before. And the more I thought about it, the less this felt isolated. Look, she said softer now, like she was adjusting her approach. You've been stressed lately. I get that. But you can't take it out on me every time something doesn't sit right with you. There it was. Another shift. Now it wasn't just jealousy. It was my stress, my perception, my problem. I almost said something, almost pushed back. But instead, I stopped. Because suddenly, I wasn't thinking about the party anymore. I was thinking about everything else. The past few months. The small things I'd brushed off. The changes I didn't question. The patterns I didn't want to see. Like how her mood seemed to follow my work. When things were good, when deals were closing, money was coming in. She was warm, present, engaged, almost invested. But the second things slowed down, she changed. Not dramatically. Not in a way you could easily call out. Just colder. More distant. Like her attention had conditions attached to it. Or the girls' nights. At first, they were occasional. Normal. Then they became frequent. Predictable. Especially when I was out of town. That part stood out more now than it ever had before. Because the timing wasn't random. It was consistent. And the questions. That was another thing. She'd never really cared about finances before. Not in detail. But recently, she started asking very specific things. About accounts. About savings. About how certain assets were structured. At the time, I thought she was just taking more interest. Now, it felt different. Calculated. You're overthinking, she said, pulling me back into the moment. I looked at her again. Same tone. Same certainty. Same refusal to even consider my perspective. And that's when something shifted in me. Not anger. Not yet. Clarity. Maybe, I said quietly. She relaxed slightly like she'd won. Like the conversation was over. But it wasn't. Not for me. Because standing there, listening to her dismiss everything I had just seen, I realized something I hadn't fully accepted until that moment. This wasn't about one dance. It wasn't about one guy. It wasn't about one night. It was about a pattern. One I had been ignoring. One she clearly didn't expect me to question. All right, I said, stepping back. Let's drop it. She nodded, satisfied. Good. But inside, I wasn't dropping anything. That night, after she went to bed, I stayed up, sitting in the dark, replaying everything. Not just the party. All of it. Every small inconsistency. Every moment that didn't quite add up. And the more I thought about it, the clearer it became. That wasn't the beginning. That was a glimpse. A crack in something that had been carefully hidden. And for the first time, I stopped asking myself if something was wrong, and started asking a much more dangerous question. How long has this been going on? The next morning didn't feel like a fresh start. It felt like a continuation of something I hadn't fully understood yet. Lena acted normal. That was the first thing I noticed. Too normal. She made coffee, scrolled through her phone, asked if I had meetings lined up for the day. Same routine, same tone, same casual energy like the night before hadn't happened at all. Like we hadn't stood in the kitchen, 5 feet apart, talking about something that clearly wasn't nothing. I watched her quietly from across the counter, trying to figure out if I was imagining things, if maybe I had overreacted. But the feeling didn't go away. If anything, it got sharper. You're staring, she said without looking up. I blinked. Am I? She smirked slightly. Yeah, it's weird. Just thinking, I replied. About? She asked, finally meeting my eyes. There was a challenge in that look. Subtle. controlled. But there. Work, I said. A lie. And the fact that I chose that answer instead of the truth told me everything I needed to know about where we were. She nodded like that made sense and went back to her phone. And that's when I noticed something else. She angled the screen away, just slightly, not obvious, but intentional. That might not mean anything on its own. But combined with everything else, it didn't feel random. I finished my coffee in silence and grabbed my keys. "I'll be late tonight," I said casually. She didn't react right away, just kept scrolling. "Okay," she said after a second. "I might go out too." There it was, effortless, like it was already planned. "With who?" I asked. She shrugged. "Probably the girls." Of course, always the same answer. I nodded and left without saying anything else. But the second I got into my car, I didn't start the engine. I just sat there, hands on the wheel, staring straight ahead, because something clicked in that moment. Not a full realization, not yet, but a shift. For the first time, I stopped reacting and started observing. The rest of the day, I barely focused on work. Meetings blurred together. Conversations felt distant. My mind kept circling the same things. The dance, her reaction, the way she deflected everything without hesitation. And then the pattern started forming. Clearer, stronger, harder to ignore. I pulled up my calendar, scrolled back. Trips, meetings, travel dates. Then I cross-referenced them mentally with her girls' nights. First, it was just a thought. But the more I looked, the more consistent it became. Every time I was out of town, she was out. Not once, not occasionally, almost every time. That's when the uneasiness turned into something else, something heavier. I got home later than usual, on purpose. I wanted to see if she'd already left. She had. The house was quiet, too quiet. I stood there for a second, listening, like I expected something to explain itself. But nothing did. I walked into the bedroom, closet door slightly open, a few hangers out of place. Nothing dramatic, just absence. Then I checked the bathroom. Her things were there, but the perfume she usually saved for special occasions? Gone. I didn't need confirmation, but I looked anyway. Her side of the drawer, slightly disorganized, like she'd been in a hurry. I leaned back against the counter and exhaled slowly. This isn't random. That thought came back again. Stronger now, louder. I pulled out my phone, opened our shared banking app. First, everything looked normal. Groceries, utilities, usual charges. Then I noticed something. A transaction from a few weeks ago. High-end restaurant. Dallas. I frowned. Scrolled further. Another one. Same city. Different date. But those dates, they didn't line up with any trips we took together. I went back to my calendar. Checked. That's when it hit me. Those were the same dates she told me she was visiting relatives. I stared at the screen for a long time. Longer than I should have. Like maybe if I looked at it long enough it would make sense. But it didn't. Instead, it did the opposite. Connected something I hadn't fully considered before. She hadn't just been distant. She hadn't just been going out more. She'd been somewhere else entirely. And she lied about it. I locked my phone slowly, set it down. And for the first time since the party, I didn't feel confused. I felt certain. Not about everything, but about one thing. There was more. A lot more. I sat down in the living room, the silence pressing in around me. And that's when I made a decision. No confrontation. Not yet. Because whatever this was, it wasn't small. And if I pushed too early, she'd shut it down again. Just like she did last night. No. If I wanted the truth, I needed proof. Real proof. Not feelings. Not assumptions. Something she couldn't deny. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, staring at the floor. Because deep down, I already knew what I was going to find. I just wasn't sure I was ready to see it. And that thought sat with me longer than anything else. Because once I crossed that line, there was no going back. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because I was emotional. Not because I was angry. but because my brain wouldn't stop working. It's a strange feeling when suspicion turns into quiet certainty. You stop reacting. You stop hoping you're wrong. And instead, you start connecting things. Cold. Methodical. Like you're solving a problem instead of living your life. By the time the sun came up, I already knew what I was going to do. I wasn't going to ask her anything. Not yet. Because I'd already seen how that played out. Deflection. Blame. Dismissal. No. If I wanted the truth, I had to find it myself. The first place I started was simple. Phone records. We were on the same plan. Always had been. Never had a reason to check it before. That changed. I logged in mid-morning, sitting at my desk with the door closed. Scrolled through her call history. First, it was noise. Random numbers. Short calls. Text logs. Nothing that stood out. Then I saw it. One number. Repeated. Over and over again. Different times. Different days. But consistent. And the timing? That's what made my stomach tighten. Late at night. Early mornings. And almost every time I was out of town. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen. Counting. Tracking. It wasn't occasional. It wasn't random. It was routine. I copied the number. Stared at it for a second. Then ran a quick search. Nothing came up. No name. No listing. That told me enough. Whoever it was, they weren't meant to be obvious. I didn't call it. Didn't text it. Didn't do anything that would tip her off. Instead, I wrote it down. And moved on. Next step. The credit card. The one I'd seen the night before in the account. I went deeper this time. Pulled full statements. Went back months. That's when things stopped being subtle. Charges I didn't recognize. Hotels. Restaurants. Not here. Not local. Dallas kept showing up. Again and again. Same places. Same patterns. I cross-checked dates. Each one lined up with a story she told me. Visiting family. Helping a friend. Quick weekend trip. Every single one. A lie. I sat there for a long time after that. Not moving. Not reacting. Just processing. Because this wasn't a one-time thing. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't even recent. This was structured. Planned. Maintained. And that realization hit differently. Because it meant something I hadn't fully accepted yet. She didn't just slip. She built this. Carefully. Over time. I closed the laptop slowly. Exhaled. But I wasn't done. Not even close. Because if she was careful, there was more. That's when I decided to check something I hadn't thought about before. Her wallet. Not in a dramatic way. Not tearing things apart. Just looking. That evening, I got home before she did. First time in a while. The house was quiet again. I walked into the bedroom. Opened her drawer. Everything looked normal. Organized. Clean. Until I found it. Tucked behind a stack of receipts. Barely visible unless you were actually looking. Credit card. Not one I recognized. Different bank. Different design. And the name? Hers. Only hers. No joint account. No shared access. I held it in my hand for a second. Feeling the weight of it. Because this wasn't an accident. This was separation. A financial line she created without me. And that meant one thing. She wasn't just hiding something. She was preparing for something. I put it back exactly where I found it. Closed the drawer. Sat on the edge of the bed. And for the first time since all of this started, I felt something close to anger. Not explosive. Not loud. Cold. Focused. Because now it wasn't just about betrayal. It was about intention. Planning. Control. I leaned forward. Elbows on my knees. Staring at the floor. And everything started to line up. The distance. The questions about money. The trips. The timing. It wasn't random. None of it was. I heard the front door open. Her voice echoing lightly through the house. Jake. I stood up. Composed myself. Yeah. I called back. I'm here. She walked into the bedroom a second later. Smiled like nothing was wrong. How was your day? She asked. I looked at her. Really looked at her. And for the first time, I didn't see my wife. I saw someone I didn't recognize. Busy, I said calmly. She nodded, setting her bag down. No tension, no suspicion. She had no idea. And that was exactly what I needed. Because now, I wasn't guessing anymore. I was building something, piece by piece. And the more I uncovered, the clearer it became. This wasn't just an affair. This was something bigger. Something that had been going on far longer than I ever imagined. And I was just getting started. I didn't rush the next step. That was the difference. Old me? I would have confronted her already, thrown everything on the table, demanded answers, pushed until something broke. But that version of me, that's exactly the version she was prepared for. So I did the opposite. I slowed down. For the next few days, I acted normal. Completely normal. Same routine. Same tone. Same conversations. If anything, I made a conscious effort to be easier to deal with, less distracted, more present, more predictable. And it worked. She relaxed. I could see it in small things. The way she stopped watching my reactions. The way her phone stayed out in the open a little longer. The way she didn't hesitate as much when making plans. She thought the moment had passed. She thought I'd let it go. That was exactly what I needed. But while she settled back into whatever version of normal she believed in, I started putting things in motion. The number I found in the phone records? I gave it to someone who could actually do something with it. Private investigator. It wasn't something I'd ever imagined doing. Honestly, even dialing that number felt surreal. Like I was stepping into someone else's life. His name was Greg. Mid-50s. Straightforward. No wasted words. The kind of guy who doesn't ask unnecessary questions because he already knows the answers. "You think your wife's cheating?" he said after I explained the situation. Not a question. A statement. "I don't think," I replied. "I need to know." He nodded once. "That's usually when people call me." I handed him everything I had. The number, the dates, the transactions. He looked it over quietly, then said something that stuck with me. "This isn't random." I didn't respond, because I already knew that. "Give me a few days," he added. "I'll see what I can find." And just like that, it started. Those few days felt longer than anything I'd experienced in a while. Not because I was anxious, but because of how calm I felt. That's what surprised me the most. I wasn't pacing. I wasn't obsessively checking my phone. I wasn't even angry. I was focused, like I had already crossed some invisible line, and everything after that was just execution. Lena didn't notice anything. If anything, she seemed lighter, more relaxed than she'd been in months, which in a strange way confirmed everything. Because that kind of ease doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from thinking you're in control. On the third day, Greg called. "Got something," he said. I didn't ask what. Didn't need to. "Send it," I replied. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed. An email. Attachments. I sat at my desk for a moment before opening it. Not hesitating. Just preparing. Then I clicked. The first image loaded. Lena, standing outside a building. Not here. Not Austin. Dallas. I recognized the street from the transactions. She wasn't alone. The man next to her, I'd never seen him before. But the way they stood, there was no confusion, no distance. His hand rested lightly against her lower back. Her body angled toward his. Familiar. That word again. I scrolled. More photos. Different days. Different outfits. Same pattern. Restaurants. Sidewalks. Hotel entrances. Always together. Always comfortable. Always practiced. I leaned back in my chair slowly. Exhaled. There it was. Not a suspicion. Not a theory. Proof. Clear. Undeniable. And still, I didn't feel what I expected. No explosion. No overwhelming anger. Just clarity. Cold. Precise. I kept scrolling. Then I saw the name. Attached to a short report. Ethan Cole. Occupation, personal trainer. I stared at it for a second. A trainer. That made sense. Lena had started going to a new gym about 2 years ago. Said she wanted to stay consistent. I never questioned it. Why would I? I kept reading. Timeline, dates, frequency. And that's when it shifted again. Because this didn't start recently. It didn't even start months ago. Started almost 2 years back. I read that line 3 times. 2 years. Not an affair. Not a mistake. A second life. Running parallel to mine. Carefully maintained. I closed my eyes for a second. Not because I couldn't handle it, but because I needed to absorb what that actually meant. Every trip. Every late night. Every girl's night. All of it fit like pieces of something I'd been staring at without seeing. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Greg. More coming. Financial side looks interesting too. Financial. I opened the next attachment. Bank records. Not ours. Hers. Different account. Different name. Maiden name. I felt something tighten in my chest. Because now, this wasn't just about him. This was about everything. Transfers. Small amounts. Spread out. Careful. Consistent. Building. I stared at the numbers. It wasn't small. Not anymore. I leaned back slowly. And that's when the full picture finally came together. The distance. The questions about money. The separate card. The hidden account. This wasn't reactive. This was planned. From the beginning. Or at least, from a point far earlier than I ever imagined. I looked at the last page. Notes. Handwritten entries Greg had photographed. Her handwriting. No doubt. Lists. Assets. Values. Estimates. My business. Our property. Accounts. All broken down. Analyzed. Calculated. And at the bottom of one page, a date. Year 2 of our marriage. I stared at that longer than anything else. Because that meant one thing. She didn't just decide to leave. She decided years ago. And everything since then was preparation. I closed the file. Set the phone down. And for the first time since this started, I felt something shift again. Not anger. Not even betrayal. Finality. Because whatever we had was already over. I just hadn't known it yet. And now, I did. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I hired a lawyer instead, quietly, efficiently. Someone who didn't care about emotions, only outcomes. At the same time, I started restructuring things. Moving assets through my business. Closing a land deal I'd been delaying. Locking in projects under new protections. At home, I stayed the same. Predictable. Calm. She didn't notice anything. Which told me everything. Because if she had been paying attention, she would have known the game had already changed. The final test came naturally. One evening, I told her we should simplify, sell the house, move out to my land outside the city. Slower life. Less pressure. Her reaction was instant. Not hesitation, contempt. She didn't even try to hide it. You didn't build this life for that, she said. That's when it became undeniable. She didn't choose me. She chose what I provided. So I nodded, walked to my desk, and brought back the divorce papers.